some people that asked about the recording, being able to see the notes of this. I totally forgot. So yeah, we're just introducing ourselves and why we're interested in the Defining Empathy project. So Kara, do you want to go?
I'm Kara. I am
So,
from
Kara.
Washington State, and I have enjoyed the empathy movement for a while now. And I think that defining language, a unified language for the groups that want to create this culture, just creates a lot of clarity and empowers the movement. And I am for that.
Great, thanks. And DJ?
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear everybody else's reasons for being here. Mine is probably a little different since I'm new to the empathy circles and the empathy movement. I just finished the first facilitator training with Edwin, but I'm not new to empathy. Empathy has been a big part of my research as a professor of education, and the role of empathy in creating students who grow up to do good for the world, essentially. I'm very interested in defining or helping to define empathy in the empathy movement and the empathy circles as sort of a part of the appendage, if you will, of the peace movement. So I'm very active in the Peace Alliance. I have been active now for 2 years, and my role in the Peace Alliance is right now with true storytelling, which is a way of gathering truth, stories that could ultimately lead to a better government and more peaceful communities. And also the HR 1111, which is the United States Peace Builders, Department of Peace Building Act, that is in front of Congress right now, that I'm working towards legislation of that and the enactment of that. And so once it becomes enacted, and we do believe it will be enacted, of course, once it becomes enacted, I really see the empathy movement as being really paramount to creating a more peaceful world and a more peaceful life. And so I see it as a partner, if you will, of everything that we're doing with the Peace Alliance.
Oh, great. Yeah. Johan Galtung, who started the Peace and Conflict Studies programs in the university, he's Norwegian. He has this quote. He says, "Peace is resolving conflict with nonviolence, empathy, and creativity, and it's a never-ending process." So I just, so it's...
I love it.
Yeah, it's a good formula. And I think the empathy part gets left out a lot in that formula. So anyway, Violetta, everyone was just introducing themselves, name, why you're interested in this project. And you're up.
Oh, I am up? Okay.
You're the last one.
Sorry for being late. For some reason, I had a different button to join something somewhere else, but here I am. I apologize for being late. Very nice to meet you. My name is Violetta. I think Kara is the only one I haven't met so far. So hi. I've been working with empathy for 25 years, ever since my master's thesis. It's a passion of mine, research-wise, but also as a cause, as a human being. I'm a psychologist. This is my therapist office. I work in Illinois, but I'm originally from Bulgaria. So obviously my accent is not getting any better because 15 years later, it's where it is. So
it's beautiful.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you. And that will be it, very briefly.
Okay. So I'm putting the link in again for our project page, so you can go there for note taking, and there's a link. Let me actually do a screen share of the site. So if you go there, Yeah, I see everyone's popping in. It says today's meeting agenda. You can just click there and it'll take you down to today's agenda. So I thought I would do a quick review of the way of being model page, and then review the course page, just the latest, and invite anyone who hasn't yet to take on a different facet as sort of a focus point, and then just go right into an empathy circle to discuss how we might develop the defining empathy course, and hear what is your definition of empathy and how does it map onto the empathy circle, because I think that's one thing that's really unique about this definition project, is it's not so just an abstract, what is empathy, but we're using the empathy circle to map on what our definition is and actually create activities that demonstrate different aspects of the definition. And you can also, is this, when we're in the circle, you can also take notes below here. So you can just take notes down here, just so we have minutes from the meeting, but we're also recording this. So anyone who hasn't not here, they can catch up on what we're doing. And then we'll stop maybe a little bit early, 15 minutes early, just to clean up the notes and just talk about what we're doing next week. And I've got some, to-do tasks here as well. So just to, some of you have already seen this. If you go to definingempathy.com, that's the project website. And you can see there's a series of links up here. There's way of being, which is the model of the empathy definition model. There's a link here for blocks to empathy. So we're putting all the different blocks to empathy, off of this page here. And there's a page for each individual block that we can go into. There's the course website. And then the last session, number 7, is going to be comparing this model to other models like the affective cognitive model, the compassion model. There's other different models of empathy definitions. So we have a list here, will be some of the different models, and then just the general definition, just a development page, kind of just general resources. So if you go to the way of being link up here, this is the basic definition right now, with empathy being defined as a way of being. So it's a broad definition of empathy, and it has different facets to it. So there's empathy for others, with others, which is really based on the work of Carl Rogers, how he defined empathy. So that's sort of the foundational aspect of it. Then there's empathy, self-empathy, which is, feeling into self. And then imaginative empathy, and the self-empathy, Priyanka and Colin are sort of focusing on that. So that's sort of their deep dive that they're working on. Imaginative empathy is sort of the role-taking, perspective-taking, and Violetta is working on that. She's been very interested in imaginative empathy. And then there's relational empathy, and then there's some other topics we probably won't cover, like empathic action and culture of empathy, and more facets can be added. So this is going to be the page for the basic definition. And then you can go into the blocks, check the blocks. And then on the workshop page, if you check that, I've been kind of cleaning this up a little bit. So, in each of these topics, you can see that each heading, you can click on that and it'll open up another page, like a sub page. So this is the basic course outline. So far, it's, this is the overview, and then we have lesson 1, which lays out the empathy way of being model. And then we go into each session, goes into the, full session on each aspect of the each facet of the model, And so we have a description and then the activity, what activities we'll be doing in order to explore that topic. Like here, self-empathy, what is the activities we're going to do, imaginative empathy, and then the activities. So there's different role plays and scenarios, for example, that we're going to be doing. And then relational empathy, and then a section on the blocks to empathy, what really blocks and hinders it, and comparing to other models. So that's I think that was, yeah. That's the basic, that's a lot to be thrown out, but I'll be kind of repeating this over and over again because you have to kind of work your way into it. So I did want to have us jump into just doing an empathy circle for the next about an hour and a half, just talking about what comes up with for you about this, developing this project. And if you have a definition of your own of empathy, and you can share that, then also be sure to map it on to what it is that we're doing here in the empathy circle. So does somebody want to keep time, or anybody got a clock there? 5-minute turns.
I can do that.
Okay. Well, let's open it up then. Whoever wants to be the first speaker, and do keep notes too if you're at that page.
So I'll keep it. I'm keeping on my phone, and it's a chime that goes off. But if I think you're not hearing it, I'll hold up my phone like this is a visual cue.
And there's the question. And 5-minute turns, and whoever would like to start. Go for it, Priyanka.
Yep.
I want to answer the first question, which
Who are you
is how
speaking
might
to?
Kara, would you be willing to listen to me?
I'm listening.
I want to answer the first question, which is how can we develop the course? And I think by dividing like the specialization areas, it has really helped me to focus on like a particular topic, and that really helped me when I'm working in this team. And I know Edwin doesn't like this, but if it's possible to like create, maybe I could do it like a project management template where we assign roles, responsibilities, and specializations in one overview, like in an Excel sheet or something, so that everyone has an overview of what everybody's doing. Because I had this problem when Colin wanted to join the team, and I was unavailable for other reasons. So then he was not sure of how he could contribute. So whenever someone new comes in, if they see that template, they can find their way around the project with this one visual. Because I'm a visual person, so I like to have that. Sorry, Kara.
That's okay. I think I caught most of it. You're gonna have to fill me in. All right. So what I heard was that looking at the first question on how to define the course, you are really leaning towards the specialized areas because it really gives you a focused topic for people as they're joining in on the teams to allow people to see where they want to fall and how they want to help.
Yeah. And I also want to create a project, something like a project management template kind of thing, which is visual. And we can visually demonstrate who has what responsibilities and how far we have progressed and what are our goals. So that it's when someone new joins, they are not like, lost, and they can find their way around the project.
So I heard that what you, as a visual person, having a actual visual representation of where we are on the project, sort of mapping it out so that there is a project template that allows anybody who comes in to see what's going on would be really beneficial for you.
Yeah. And another thing I found really helpful for me was clearly defining the goals. Like, I want to do this in the next 2 weeks because I'm a master procrastinator. And if I don't have any pressure, I don't do anything, or I don't feel motivated to do anything. So having that goal really helps. So when last time I met with Edwin, I said that I want to finish the literature review in the next 2 weeks. It really helps me to focus just on that.
So I heard
So
that having real good clarity on end goals, what they are, and by when to have them allows you to focus and get them done.
yeah. So this gives me another idea that for the entire my participation in the project, I'm going to make a list of all the goals that I want to achieve with a timeline, just for me to help me to work better on the project.
So you came up with a plan now for yourself have a visual map of what you're doing with the by-wins attached to it so that you know where you're going and what you're doing and then can do it.
Yeah. And I really feel bad that I sometimes cannot attend these meetings because it's too late for me. So when I'm exhausted, I cannot attend, and I really enjoy these meetings because I get a lot of ideas by just brainstorming and listening to people.
So I hear that you are disappointed that life got in the way and you couldn't participate in these meetings the way that you would like to, because you really get great value and ideas from hanging out in these groups.
Yeah, it's because I'm in India and it's too late for me. So
Time.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
because
I
you're in
feel fully
India
heard.
and it's a whole different side of the world, literally.
Yeah. Thank you, Kara. I feel fully heard.
Wonderful. I will speak to Violetta. Did I say your name
With
right?
pleasure. Yes, of course. Listening.
Wait, so I haven't looked at the map on what was currently going on in the course very deeply. There we go.
Sorry about that. I forgot to reset the timer. Go ahead.
And this is my first of the meetings that I've been able to attend. My house caught on fire a month ago, and this last month has been a little weird.
Oh my. My empathy. So your house caught on fire, and you haven't been able to join our meetings because the last month after your house caught on fire was very weird.
A little weird, yeah. Everyone is fine. It's just property damage, so no big stress. It's just stuff, and we're all right with that. But I'm really excited to finally be diving back in because this fills my cup greatly.
You're excited to be back. Well, everybody's fine, so that there's probably some stress, but there's no big trauma happening around that. And it really fills your cup to work on empathy projects and maybe the specific.
Specifically with the Edwin one. So I use empathy. I got into the circle because I am an executive leadership coach, and I use empathy and empathetic reflection as a huge part of everything that I do with my clients.
Empathy is very important in your job as a coach, as executive coach, and you're really excited about it.
And more importantly, I believe it is a skill of adulting. I mean, leadership, but I think leadership and adulting are pretty well parallel.
So every person that desires to be an adult or fully grown and a leader, but even if they're not in a specific leadership position, you believe they need to know how to do empathy.
Yeah, it's one of those soft skills that has incredibly hard impact and allows us to create space, allows us to hear ourselves and hear others without all of the personal, societal, global baggage that we come with.
A really hard impact of a soft skill, and some of that impact is that we can make space for one another, kind of living next to us, maybe not completely away from us, all the baggage that we carry from societal pressures and polarizations.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm not sure how the map looks exactly for the course currently, other than what we just quickly reviewed. But I think that that's kind of how I understand empathy, is it starts with one question. And then there's no follow-up questions. You just ask the one question, and then you listen first and reflect. And knowledge is never transformation, but reflection almost always is.
Okay. You're not quite sure about the map of this particular course and project, but you know that in general, empathy is just this one question that we come with, and then we just follow the speaker and use the tool that transforms the most, which is reflection rather than knowledge.
I feel fully heard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lou, would you be my listener, please?
Yes, I'd love to.
Okay. I've been thinking since our last meeting about many of the procedures, but also of the overall goals of this process of defining empathy and preparing a course on defining empathy. And I think I see kind of two currents that I'm making peace within myself between these two currents.
Yeah, so you've been, did you want to go on?
You probably could handle more. So the
ahead.
one current is kind of being patient with bringing more people on board and making space within this team to grow and to change, as we talked about last week. But at the same time, keeping a closer eye on the things that Priyanka was talking about. How do we make sure we do have a product and we do have a goal and we do have some kind of a timeline that we follow?
Yeah, so you've been reflecting a lot on the since the last meeting about all the things that were discussed and the development of the course, and you're aware of two things that are inside you that feel important. One is the idea of what is the size of this team and how does it expand or contract and who comes in and what do they contribute. And the second thread is how do we actually get stuff done and make progress, and the things that Priyanka was talked about. So yeah, so it sounds like the two threads are inclusion and structure and progress.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I would rename the first current as patience with the growth, kind of allowing time for things to unfold. And the second one would be, yes, let's have kind of an overall framework of how we get things done.
Yeah, so it's really more like patience
Mhm.
and having patience to let things grow organically, and then on the other side, having structure and some kind of timeline so that we accomplish something.
Yes, wonderful. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll go to JD. If that's all right with you.
EJ.
DJ, thanks.
Okay.
My dyslexia is showing. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. What do I want to say? Yeah, I mean, I think so. This isn't the first project that I've been involved with Edwin, where there's a development process and people are invited into it, and it's kind of fluid, and empathy circle process is used as a way of kind of reflecting and letting things emerge. And I also feel that what Violetta just described as, the richness and creativity of the organicness of that, and a concern about how much time am I investing, and are we actually getting anywhere? And are we just expanding all the time, or is there some focusing that results in something? So I share those feelings.
Okay, so you agreed with Violetta about how because of your background and already working with Edwin on other projects that are kind of structured this way, where the empathy circle process is happening and reflection is happening, and you're trying to construct something, you're trying to co-create something. In this case, it's the definition of empathy for the empathy circle movement. You're kind of feeling that impatience or that frustration that Violetta kind of brought up about how, you're bringing new people in and you're kind of expanding what you've been doing, or kind of creating different ways of looking at what you've been doing. And what you really want to do is focus and get it done, and meet your goals of having a definition that exists.
Yes, and I want to say I don't really actually view those two things in opposition. I see them as two different modes of work, of functioning, that helps create the creative process. So I think there is I think the role of the empathy circle process is exploration, feedback, generation, uh, um, and I think the role of assigning tasks and people having deadlines and actually doing those tasks are so that we have stuff to reflect on. And so I think those two modes of functioning can work if they're used appropriately, can work in concert to produce a good result.
So you don't see them as opposing or working in opposite. You see the function of the empathy circle in this co-construction of a definition of what is empathy, or empathy as defined in the empathy circles or the empathy movement. You see it as being very productive and very very creative and very purposeful. But you also see there's this other side to it, this other part to it, which requires people to have actual input, I guess, in writing. And if we're sort of co-constructing that written document and combining with the empathy circles, during the empathy circles, we'll be actually giving feedback and having discussions about what's been written, and therefore we'll move along a little bit more quickly than if we just keep having empathy circles discussing, how to bring new people in or whatever it is that kind of takes us away from the focus.
Yeah, and I think I also think that I also am a big believer in trial runs, in like prototype testing. So you develop something to a certain amount, then you try using it and see what happens. So, Edwin has an outline right now. Someone suggested in the last meeting, well, let's just run the course and we can experience it and then we can reflect on that. I actually thought that was a pretty good idea, because you can talk ad infinitum about the concepts, and about the idea of what you're going to do, but then when you actually do it, you have to actually do something. So I would advocate for not going too much longer in trying to define what we're doing, and actually do it, and then reflect on doing it, and having it evolve that way.
Okay, so you are saying that the empathy circle format works really well, but we could just keep having discussions in the empathy circle, like, forever. And wouldn't it be nice, someone mentioned last time, wouldn't it be nice if maybe we just do like a trial run? You really like this idea of prototypes. You really like this idea of experimentation. And if we run it through as it stands, maybe right now, or as it stands in the near future, and we can kind of do some testing and have some feedback, and maybe we go back to the drawing circle in certain aspects. But you really like the idea of moving along, and you really like the idea of moving along by sort of testing what has already been established as a working definition.
Yeah, and it isn't just that I like the idea. I have a lot of experience in it, and I have a lot of confidence in it. So I think it's a good way to work.
Yeah, it's not just that you like the idea, it's that you have a lot of experience with it, and you've also had experience with Edwin working on similar kinds of projects. And so you see that as a possible resolution to this notion that there's some kind of frustration with things not moving along.
Yeah, and I want to say I'm not frustrated. So,
Mhm.
your reflection said I'm frustrated. I'm not frustrated. Yeah, and
Mhm.
I don't see it as a conflict. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I need a few seconds to kind of
Okay.
regroup here. Yeah, that. Okay, Edwin, would
Hmm.
you mind? Okay.
Listening.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So, um, I had a really interesting buddy call yesterday with Graham. Some of you might know him. And we were kind of talking about what empathy circles meant to us. Now, he has 2 years experience, and I have like less than, I don't know, 2 months. So.
So you had an interesting buddy call with Graham, and you're talking about the empathy circles and the meaning of the circle to you. And Graham's had a lot of experience, and 2 years, and you've had a little bit.
Right. But it was very fruitful, our discussion. And I really felt that I came away from that buddy call, which was only about 45 minutes long, with really something to kind of start to hang this definition on. I don't like that at all. I don't like that language. I just kind of I started to sort of redefine what empathy circles or empathy in empathy circles and the empathy movement means to me.
And from that that empathy or that buddy call, you started to get a different understanding of what empathy and empathy circles sort of means to you.
Right. And, I can't get away from the fact that I'm an individual who's done research on empathy for over 25 years and who has been living this entire life as an empath. I can't take that out of my definition.
Yeah, your definition is bringing who you are to the table, and you can't set that aside because it's who you are. Yeah,
I
and
can't
you're
set
being
that
an
aside.
empath, so you're bringing that your sense of being an empath to the table.
Right, exactly. So I have the scholar part of me, and then I have the empathy circle kind of buddy part of me, which is kind of the new part of me. And then I have this, empath person who was born into a world with so much suffering that I really didn't think that I could bear it.
And you have different qualities too. You have that academic understanding, but also a real sensitivity, sounds like, to life and feelings, the suffering, the world's suffering.
Right. And so I've always asked myself, why is there suffering in a world where there doesn't need to be suffering? And this has propelled my PhD at UCLA and propelled me into my teaching and learning. That I am redefining what is teaching, what is learning, just like we're redefining what is empathy here today.
And this issue about suffering in life has really been really driven your exploration, your life, your PhD, and just really how to maybe address suffering, why they're suffering, just exploring the whole nature of suffering.
Right. And I don't know how much time I have, Lou.
1 minute and 26 seconds.
Okay. So, well, I just made some notes, earlier, and I think part of why I'm defining empathy as I'm defining it now has to do with this question of why is there suffering? But I was really grateful and really blessed and really just such a lucky person to have a grandfather who was working on solving world hunger issues.
So you feel very grateful that your grandfather was working at addressing kind of real problem of world hunger.
Yes, and he was a very well-known agricultural scientist. And at the same time, he was my dear grandfather who I adored and spent many, many, many hours and months and years, and even ended up living near him at the end of his life. And we had a very close relationship.
So it sounds a very meaningful close, meaningful relationship, and hearing a lot of gratitude for that, as well as maybe a little pride in that he was very contributed to humanity with his agricultural work.
Yes, but I look at it from a different perspective. I look at it from an anthropological perspective, as an individual and culture perspective, and we're still sitting in the same situation today with, why is there suffering, and the suffering seems to continue.
And you're looking at it from this anthropological perspective, just there's all the suffering in the world, and why is that so?
Right, I think my time is up, right, Lou?
Yeah, feel heard.
Yeah, I feel heard, thank you.
Okay. Priyanka, could I speak to you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I love this talk about being practical and task oriented. I really been doing a lot on this. I as I mentioned in the email, I've been pretty busy creating the intro videos, which to the training, which I had a lot of fun with, and that's done. So I'm really going to be focusing on this project now.
Yeah. So you want to talk about being practical and getting things done aspect of things, and so you've been working on creating the videos, and now you're fully focused on this project.
And the framework is already set. So there's already, 7 lessons, and there's different topics. So I think the main question is there a topic someone wants to take a hold of? And like you're doing self-empathy, you and Colin, and you've got 2.5 hours to create a 2.5 hour lesson on that. And Violetta's doing imaginative empathy. So, we're starting to subdivide and have a focus for each person if they want to take on a section.
Yeah, so the framework is already there. There are 7 topics, and whoever joins can pick one topic. And so the goal is to create a 2.5 hour lesson, like a video. And so you've already subdivided, and you and Violet are already working on it.
And the idea is that the first half, we use a similar framework as the facilitator training. The first half hour is the group, maybe a presentation, maybe not a 2.5 hour presentation, 20-minute presentation, something like that. And then we have about an hour and a half of activities that, that's a hands-on activities that we actually do. So you kind of learn through the practice, and then a debrief at the end.
Yeah, so it's organized just like the facilitator training. The first half hour would be some kind of a didactic, and then followed by 1.5 hours of activities, and then a debrief at the end.
And there a thing that Priyanka and I spent a lot of time is we had to sort of synchronize our starting point of everybody's got these different understandings of what empathy is, and we needed to find a starting point to build on. And it took us a little bit of dialogue to kind of get that. And we do start with Rogers and his empathic listening is sort of the first step, and from there we're kind of building it. And I think that's a common starting point for most people.
Yeah, so everyone has a different starting point. So you had a dialogue with me, and so we decide. Finally, after a lot of dialogue, we had that starting point about Carl Rogers' model, and we are building on that.
That was with Violetta. She had a little bit different, and so but I think we really came to a good, core. So that's part of this circle, is just to hear everyone, where they are, and so that we can kind of come to some kind of a core starting point. And I do think that Carl Rogers, his empathic listening is really the foundation. It's the foundation of the empathy circle, and it's also the foundation of the definition of empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, so this Carl Rogers definition is the foundation of the circle, and it's also the foundation of the circle. And so the discussion you had was with Violetta, and now it's kind of ironed out. And the purpose of this circle is just to find out where everybody is, what they are doing, and to come to a common understanding and a common starting point.
So there's one section that I'm hoping to get Lou in on, is well, volunteer Lou is for the blocks to empathy, because he's so good at the in the empathy circle, the challenges, which is really the blocks to empathy. So we need a 2.5 hour lesson on the blocks to empathy and role plays and stuff like that. So yeah, that's he's
Yeah.
laughing. I'm laughing.
You're hoping to get Lou to work on the blocks to empathy because he's really good at that. And so we need 2.5 hours of this lessons, activities, and things on the blocks to empathy.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, DJ, Kara, so just wondering what aspects they're interested in. If they want to focus on some aspects, they can join one of the other ones, or yeah. But I'm sort of working on all of them, and sort of want to work. I find that I could do this whole thing on my own, but it's very time consuming and painful, just doing it by myself. And I get a lot from the give and take with people, hearing people and the feedback, and so that's good, that's not so good, and all the different insights. So it really enriches I think the whole project, just to do it as a team.
Yeah, you could do it all on your own, but it's very painful and time consuming. And so you get a lot from these dialogues and the feedback from people, that someone says this is good, this is bad, and so it really enriches you.
And doing
And
this doing this in an empathy circle, we're using the process, because I think that's one of the main things that's very different about this definition, is we're going to show within the context of the empathy circle what we're talking about, and we can demonstrate it and role play it to take it out of like this, what tends to be sort of an abstract sort of definitions that I see out there.
yeah. So, and this circle is very good because we are doing this in a circle, so it demonstrates what we are going to actually do in the training. And because there's a lot of abstractions out there, and you just want to make it very practical.
Yeah. So, for example, there's a whole book out there on against empathy, right? Paul Bloom's book on against empathy. But what he is saying is, as the speaker here, I could say, I am very angry. I'm like pissed off. And then instead of you listening, Priyanka, instead of you empathizing, you would say, well, I'm very angry. I'm very pissed off. So you're matching my state, state matching, or yeah. So it's a contagion, emotional contagion. And I can say that's not empathy. That's not what we mean by empathy. And we can role play it here in the empathy circle. And so I think that's like bringing it again to a concrete form here.
Yeah, so you're interested in bringing it in a concrete form. An example of this would be Paul Bloom's Against Empathy, but what he's really saying is that for example, when you say, I'm really angry, I take on that emotion from you and I also get angry. And that's not empathy. And we can role play that in the circle.
Yeah. And what is empathy is what you're doing, is actually listening and reflecting back, and we can make that comparison. In the same way, we can look at the topic of suffering, pain and suffering, and say, well, where is pain and suffering in the empathy circle, and how do we relate to that? And we can have a tangible model example of it, so we make it more concrete and reproducible too.
Yeah, so we want to make things concrete and reproducible. For example, where is the pain? So when talk about pain and suffering, where is the pain and suffering concretely in the circle? You can point
And
it
how
out.
are we relating to it too? How do we relate to that pain and suffering with empathy versus with sympathy or other
Yeah,
things?
and we can also demonstrate how we relate to it with empathy or sympathy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing with in terms of taking on a topic, I'm working on the lesson 1, and I'm working on a slideshow. So I hope to have that slideshow in a video done like in a week or 2, and then I can show it to everyone as an example. And then we want to have a slideshow. So we would have a intro didactic component on self-empathy, on imaginative empathy, etc. So that's another component.
Yeah, so you're working on a video of the slideshow. So you have to, you hope to have it done so that you can show it to others as an example.
Yeah, it seems like a long 5 minutes. Am I still?
I forgot to start the timer.
I thought so.
Sorry.
I feel fully
Yeah.
heard.
Good call, Edwin. Sorry about that, gang.
No problem. Lou, would you be willing to listen to me?
Yes. And I started the timer this time too.
Okay. um, there's a lot. There's a lot. Brain is bursting with ideas. I don't know which one to talk about. Yeah, I think what Edwin said about giving us an example would really help, because then if Edwin gives me an example of one completed module, then I know, because it's also important to maintain the what do you call it? The coherence and what do you call it? Yeah, it's important to maintain that all the modules have the same sort of, like, we do it in the facilitator training where we have similar, what is it called? Consistency. Yeah, important to be consistent.
Yeah, so you're full of ideas. You're very stimulated by the conversation. And one of the things that you like is Edwin's idea of him producing one module, so that we all see what that's like and we see what the elements are, because you think consistency among the different modules is important and you think it'll help with that.
Yeah. And also, I don't think that they can be really standalone, because we need to build on what was done earlier. So if, I don't know, module 1, after module 1, in module 2, we also need to recap and build on what we've done in module 1 to maintain that so that the learners can maintain a thread from one module to the other. So I don't know how effective it would be if they were really just standalone. I don't think that would be very effective for the learners.
So you think it's important that the modules integrate in some way, and that they build upon each other. And while they are separate modules, you don't think that they should be completely standalone. You think there should be some integrating elements between them, and they should build on one another.
Yeah, so I'm an educator. So for example, when I'm creating my curriculum or lesson plan, I always make sure that I build on what was done earlier, so that students integrate that learning, they apply it, and then they learn something new, integrate that, apply it, and then learn something new again. So that really helps them.
Yeah, so your background as an educator informs you that, for people to do good learning, you want to bring forward what they learned before you introduce something new. You want to make sure they integrate what they have learned already in with the new information that you're giving. And you think you want to be mindful of that when we're creating this.
Yeah. And I have an idea for the next empathy circle. Like maybe Edwin is working on the first module. So we could actually, within our circle, we could try out some exercises and have ideas about what exercises we can do for the first module.
Yeah, so you have an idea for what to do next time we're together, which is for people to come up with ideas for exercises for the first module, and we could talk about those or explain them to the group.
No, we could do them. Like
Oh,
we could
do them. We
actually
could
do
do them
them.
in the group. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And that is building on your idea, Lou, of actually doing stuff and prototyping. So here we can start with the first prototype, like, just do it amongst ourselves and get feedback from that, from each
Ye-
other.
Yeah, so much better than just talking about what we would do to actually doing it, like I was suggesting with prototyping. And you think we'd learn a lot more from doing that.
So what we could do is maybe Edwin could give us 1 week before, oh, I need exercises for this topic and this topic. And then Priyanka can do this, Lou can do this. And then each of us come up with an exercise. And since we have 2 hours, we can equally divide it. And each of us can be the facilitator of that exercise. And then after that, we can have a short feedback. And then the next person can do their exercise and we can have a short feedback on that.
Yeah, so your idea is that if Edwin can identify the different topics or things that he needs an exercise for, then different people could be assigned to come up with exercises for that thing. And then when we get together, we could each have a little bit of time to do our exercise and then have a little bit of reflection on it.
And International Association of Facilitators has a very good database of such kind of exercises.
Yeah, and you're aware of a database, International Facilitators database that has lots of ideas for exercises in it.
Yeah. Thank you, Lou. I feel fully heard.
Okay. I'll talk to Violetta.
I'm listening.
Okay. I like Priyanka's idea. It's kind of a way of beginning the prototyping and tryout phase without actually having to just do the whole course, But we're talking about doing that with one module, so I thought that's very inventive thinking, and I like the idea of doing that.
You're excited about her idea to prototype module by module or week by week instead of having to develop the whole project and then prototyping it.
Yeah. And and I'm moved to shift to the question of what is my definition of empathy and how does it show up in the empathy circle? That was also something we're asked to talk about. So yeah, I think my definition of empathy is to kind of be with the other person. And I think there are lots of ways to do that. And the way we do it in the empathy circle is by reflecting back what we hear the person saying. In real life, I might be giving someone empathy silently. I might not say anything. I might touch them. I might give them a hug. I might do something else, or I might say something to them, or I might just say, uh-huh, as opposed to reflecting back everything I'm understanding. So there are lots of ways that I might do that. I'll stop there.
But you're trying to move towards the second question now, which is what is your definition of empathy and how does it apply to the empathy circle? And your definition is kind of simple, just being with the other. And it could have different expressions. And specifically in the empathy circle, it means reflecting back what you heard as accurately as possible. But in life outside of the empathy circle, it could include being silent, giving a hug, saying aha, just expressing different ways to show that you are with the other.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say being with them to me means that you understand what they're saying and you understand why it's important to them, like why they're saying it, um, and and that you understand how they're feeling about it. So I would say those are the three components that I am sensing, whether I reflect all of that back or not. That that's the way in which I'm trying to sense into the other person. Stop there.
So being with the other means actually understanding the content of what they're saying, but also the motive of why they're saying what they're saying, or the experiences that are behind whatever it is they're saying. And you said that these are the three components, but I'm not sure what is the third component.
Emotions, the feelings.
The feelings. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the why is really like why it's important to them, what values, what
Okay.
values they hold, what their deep desires are, what
Mm.
and nonviolent communication would say what their needs are. Um, yeah, I'll stop there.
So just like Rosenberg would talk about needs, you're thinking about emotions and values. Why what they're saying is important to them? How
Yeah.
does that make them feel? And what is it that they're actually saying? Those are three components that you include in being with somebody
Right.
empathetically.
And in the empathy circle, when I'm doing reflection, I try to reflect most of those things, unless my judgment is that the person who's speaking might receive all of that as too much for them, too intimate. Uh, and so then I might only reflect part of that, what I think they would comfortably receive. And I'm paying attention to how they are receiving my reflection, like if they are enjoying it or if they're not enjoying it.
So when you are in the empathy circle, you usually try to do all these three things. Since empathy in the empathy circle for you looks like being with the other, looks like reflecting, usually trying to reflect all three aspects, but you're using your judgment, kind of following closely how the other person reacts to your words and whether they look like they're ready to hear what you have to say at that point. And if you decide they're not, you probably adapt a little bit.
Yeah, and I know my time's up. I'm going to say one more thing though, which is
Okay.
that I think it's a really important part of the empathy circle process that we don't try to teach people that from the beginning, and we don't expect people to do that in the beginning, and we don't tell them, that's not empathy. If they're not like doing a full empathic reflection, we're not telling them, well, that's not empathy. You're not doing that right.
Mm. And you find that very important to not expect people to do all these things with all the nuances from the very beginning, and definitely not to tell them, well, what you're doing right now is not empathy. Okay.
Right. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
You're welcome. DJ, would you mind listening to what I have to say?
Thank you. Yes, I'd be glad to.
Thank you. I keep going back to something that I see differently, I think, from several of. Oh, hi, Crystal. Nice to see you. You joined us. From several of the people that talked, and it is the connection between what we would call the academic definition of, or the cognitive definition, or however we would call it, of what empathy is, and how that relates to me and to the expression of the empathy in the empathy circle, but also in the rest of life.
So you're commenting on you are thinking and feeling a little differently, perhaps, than some other people have been talking about the relationship of empathy, or the definition of empathy in relationship to academic definitions and self. And you would like to speak to that?
Mm-hmm. I would just argue, as somebody who absolutely loves science, and that science is a way to seek that ultimate truth. and that we maybe we're seeing human beings differently, but for me, human beings in the way that they're creating a framework of understanding of the world is a very practical thing. Often with my students, I quote Kurt Lewin, who says, "There's nothing more practical than a good theory." And if I think that's part of what we're working on here, how do we connect a pretty complex conversation in academia to an open source, very widely accessible training, and how do we make these things work? And my passion is that it's not impossible. We could connect it. It makes sense to me, and I have the hope that I could be that connection between these two different narratives.
So you see your role here as being someone who can take the scientific or academic definitions that you've been working with for a long time to kind of inform how this open source process of anybody can participate in an empathy circle. And so you're really wanting to take something that you believe in, which is scientific, and you believe it's valid and it has worth, and that human beings are propelled to have this very practical working tools of definitions that go towards the truth, like what is the truth and how can the truth be defined, and you want to translate that into something that can be used here in the empathy circle movement.
In other words, I believe we're all scientists. We're all constantly making different assumptions about how the world functions, and especially in connection with other humans, we're constantly trying to understand what is, just like what Lou was talking about, what is the emotion behind it, what is the value behind it, and we're learning. And complexifying is one of our major characteristics, and I think it's wonderful. And I'm hoping that we could connect it to this process and project kind of in a seamless way. And just a spoiler alert, to me, Rogers does it beautifully, and I'm very much firmly grounded in the definition that we're using from Rogers.
Okay, well, you,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. I think you really like the definition that Carl Rogers has, and that's the foundation of what we're doing here today, and with Edwin in defining empathy for the empathy circles and the empathy circle movement. And everybody is a scientist, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that everybody comes to these empathy circles or this empathy circle training, or everybody lives their life as a scientist, where we're kind of unpacking the complexities of life. And so there is that kind of, constant change or constant awareness, or this sort of in and out of feeling and emotion and thinking and analyzing and wondering and defining and constructing that goes on in everybody's life. And so you're hoping that the definition that we're working on together here will really serve that. And so everybody feels that they're part of that. They're part of the definition, and that it works for them, whomever they are.
Thank you so much, DJ. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Violetta. Crystal, would you like to be a listener?
Love to, DJ. Thank you.
Well, welcome. I have a lot of love for everyone here. I feel a lot of connection with everyone here. I think people who spend time talking about defining empathy in order to change the world are just really good people. I mean, what a great thing to do with your Friday afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. I mean, how extraordinary to be part of this. Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say how wonderful and extraordinary it is to be a part of this group, and that you feel love from Edwin, Lou, Priyanka, Kara, and Violetta. We're thankful to be here.
And you.
And you.
Yes. And that I really want to thank Edwin for creating the Empathy Circle movement and creating empathy circles and inviting us to be part of this co-construction of the definition.
And you want to thank Edwin for inviting us and also for creating this movement and all the time that he spent in that and inviting us to be a part of the co-construction of this empathy movement.
Yes, and I feel very privileged. And so with all that said, to be practical, I would say that I'm very interested, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 95% sure that I'd like to work on the relational segment. I believe, from my understanding of it, that it has to do with all kinds of relationships. It could be a one-on-one relationship. It could be the individual in the world. It could be the individual in small groups. It could be the individual, and I guess maybe other kinds of triads or whatever.
And you're sharing how you'd like to be a part of creating, working on the relational part and how it can be reflective in our individual dynamics, but also in our groups and other triads. And you're 95% sure that's what you know.
Yeah, and the world too, and the world. And so I think that's where I fit in, because for me, the definition of empathy really lies in the connection, that energy connection that happens as a dynamic. So it's a little bit of a different way of looking at empathy. I don't see it as an internal emotion so much. I see it as a lived connection.
And you're sharing how you see this lived connection between us as an energy force that is not just an emotion. It's an energy.
Yes, and I'm not even sure it is an emotion. And I'm not sure that empathy is an emotion. I'm not sure about that part. I just know that it's a connection, and that connection is dynamic and fluid, and it goes beyond words.
And you're sharing how empathy, the word itself, is dynamic and fluid and relational, and it goes beyond a word.
Right. So I'm thinking that that fits best in the relational category. I could be wrong. I would actually go wherever Edwin thought I might fit best, or more than one area. But I really like the idea of having maybe a little practice exercise that I could test out, not necessarily in some kind of order.
Yeah, and you're sharing how you are flexible with going where Edwin sees that you would serve best. And you love Priyanka's idea of actually applying it in action and coming up with exercises.
Thank you, Crystal. I feel fully heard.
Yeah, thank you. If I could take a moment, yeah. Kara, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you or speaking with you. I'd love if you would reflect back.
Crystal, I'm listening.
Excellent. Thank you. I love what DJ just shared in terms of honoring our perceptions and that how perceptions transcend words.
You love what DJ shared about honoring perception and its connection to our words.
And how when aliens come down on this planet one day, we are not going to have words. Yeah.
And when aliens come down, words might not just cut it.
Right. And going back to what Priyanka shared, the beauty of creating exercises to engage with people from different cultures who words, even the definition as we are disputing of empathy, means something differently. A word may not mean the same thing.
And to what was said previously, that globally, one word doesn't mean the same thing cross culture.
Yeah, and I've actually been working on this and creating my own company, and the only solid phrase that is a mantra that I've been able to find that means the same thing in a variety of cultures is all for one and one for all.
And in your business that you've been developing, one thing that seems to work across the board is all for one and one for all.
Because we really are one human race. And that raises the challenge of what Lou shared of what are our blockers, and being aware when we're engaging in these conversations with others and helping them cultivate empathy and yet be aware of our own biases, right? Is how do we uncover those blocks?
So as a one culture, it really leans you to the question of what are the blocks, and why is it, if we are all here to do the same thing, that there are blocks?
Yeah, and how can we, as part of the empathy circle, make people aware of their blocks without judging their definition of empathy?
And in a space that is designed to be non-judgmental, how do we have that judgment without being judgmental?
Right. And I was even thinking about this beautiful app called Menti, where people can type in anonymously words that come up when people are speaking, and that we could create a word cloud. And wouldn't that be beautiful?
And then it made you think that, like Menti, the word cloud concept, where that as people are listening in a circle, they can pop up the things that are coming in their mind and create that word circle,
Because
word cloud.
yeah, thank you. Because I believe that there's a crazy research study on a lottery ticket, and that when people um, are asked to give up their lottery ticket, the people who choose not to give it up or want 5 times the cost that someone else who just picked random numbers is their investment in the process. And people want to be a part of the process.
And in a study about lottery tickets, one of the things that came from that is that people's investment is what attaches them to an outcome, and they want to be invested.
Yeah, they want to be seen, heard, validated, and, you know, and if aliens do present themselves one day, I believe Edwin's empathy circles are certainly a key to connecting and engaging, and I am just thankful to be here.
And when we are visited by aliens, the practice of empathy, specifically Edwin's empathy circles, are going to be pivotal in making sure that that transition runs smoothly. And we are very glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, assuming that we don't just focus on words.
Assuming that we don't just focus on words.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. I will speak to Edwin. Are you participating? Can I speak to you? Yes? Okay.
Yep, listening.
I haven't heard from you in a while, so I'll speak to you. Okay, I'm going to address the 2 questions in the topic as if it were one question. So how might we develop the Defining Empathy course through its definition and use in an empathy circle?
So you're going to combine the 2 questions into one.
Yeah. So my understanding of empathy, above and beyond any verbal definitions, is that it's actually really simple. It's just not very easy.
So your definition of empathy, kind of beyond the words, is simple but not easy.
It's really listening to understand and then reflecting to be understood.
And to really listen to understand, and reflecting to be understood, to giving that reflection.
Yeah. It's a way to move from the pain of not being seen and yet always being judged to the place of being heard without judgment.
So it's moving from a space of not being seen and the pain of that to a place where you are seen and you're not judged. and maybe feeling connected and seeing.
Yeah, I think that, so I say this a lot, that humans, if you boil us down, are just meat suits full of hormone soup that has survived trauma and drama to get to today.
So your sort of metaphor or analogy of humans is a meat sack that has gone through a series of traumas to get to where it is today.
Yeah. Meat suit full of hormone soup. You don't get to control the hormone soup. You get to control the meat suit.
So there's a meat and hormone soup, and you can't control the hormone soup component of it. You can control the meat, but not the hormone.
And that's kind of where the empathy comes in, is that it allows for us to be a meat suit full of hormone soup, process through that trauma and that drama in a safe, non-judgmental way that transcends cultures.
And the empathy is the way to. Can you say that again? It's something about trans. Yeah,
Yeah, the empathy circles are a way for us to transition through that hormone soup and control our meat suit to process that trauma and drama in a non-judgmental way that transcends cultures.
So the empathy circle is a way to do the processing of those hormones in the meat suit, and it's a way to process that.
Yeah, looking at the map that's on the page, it is the process of self. It is the process of relationships. It's the process of working through blocks. It's all of those because it's simple but not easy.
So there's a process of working through all the traumas, and it's simple, but it's not an easy process to do. And the empathy circles helps to do that processing.
And so I think that using the empathy circle as the training foundation and definition is an excellent framework to build this entire course around.
So you're really appreciating the empathy circle as a framework to develop and use it in the course too. So you just see the benefits of that.
Yeah. So if we were doing a 2.5-hour course, I would say 30 minutes of that is a training on, really defining the whatever the topic is, coming down to that one question and giving 2 hours to reflect and process in that empathy circle.
So you're seeing sort of a format is the first half hour or so, you sort of give the presentation, you kind of come to the question to discuss, and the rest of the time is using the empathy circle to discuss and explore the topic.
Yeah, I'd say it is a simple, in a 2.5-hour, I'd boil it down to a simple 3, 2, 1, 3 10-minute sections of explanation, 2 hours of empathy around one question.
So it's really about spending most of the time in the empathy circle exploring a question.
Yeah, because I think when I have done course creation in the past, it's real easy to look for fixes and changes and complicate things.
And from your experience in developing courses, that it becomes very kind of more complicated than it needs to be. And maybe you're seeing this as a simpler way that's not as complicated.
And yes, and as a final thought, so we're not looking to fix anything or anyone with this program, but we are looking to change. And that starts inside ourselves, and that comes with that empathy reflection.
Yeah, so you're seeing this is not about fixing people, but really creating maybe a space, a context for change to happen.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. Can't remember who I talked to last time. So I got some notes here. Speak to Lou then.
Okay, listening.
Let's see. So yeah, I like you had mentioned, and Priyanka, about kind of starting to do the course. So I do have that intro video that I want to get out. I can send that out, and then we can actually sort of start with the first lesson, lesson one, which is sort of sharing the overall model.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're liking Priyanka's idea of beginning to test out the first module of the course, and you have a video that you've made already that's an introductory, and you could send that out to everybody. And then
Yeah, I'm working on it. It's not ready yet.
Oh.
I hope it'll be done by next week.
Okay.
And the first course, the first session is sort of laying out the model and then asking, what is your definition? How does it relate to the empathy circle? So like with the facilitator training, we start with your values, where you are. So we're kind of hearing everyone, about what their definition of empathy is, and tying it to the empathy circle too.
Yeah, so the first session would be laying out the model of a way of being, empathy model, and then inviting people to bring their definitions of empathy in. So it's share. So there's some sharing going on, and then and then proceeding from there. I've lost the last piece.
Yeah, that was the essence of it. And another thing, I love just the exploration that we're doing here, like, just the open sort of exploration of empathy, what it means. And I just find it very rich and kind of exciting and interesting just to hear what everybody's sort of thinking and feeling.
Yeah, so you're really enjoying the conversation that's happening. It's very rich for you and exciting, and you're learning a lot from it.
And when you gave your definition of how you're deciding empathy is presence, I'm seeing that the sort of the foundation, the first step of Roger's definition of empathy, which is sort of this. It's generally, the term is just empathy. That's what empathy, the term has been used. I think it's a little, because we have a more complicated definition, a broader, as a way of being, that's sort of an other-oriented empathy that you're sort of describing, right? So that as I'm speaking, you're sensing into who I am, and that's sort of an other-oriented empathy.
Yeah, so you're saying, what I described as how I see empathy in the empathy circle, being a presence. You really think that what I described sounds very aligned with Rogers and very aligned with the way you think of it, and that you see it very much as empathy being something that you're offering towards the other. Yeah, and that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and the other aspect is empathy with yourself. So, as you're listening to me, I'm sort of sensing into, my body to, what ideas come that I want to share. How do I feel about this? What's the sense of, stress, anxiety, excitement, that I'm feeling? And so I'm sensing into my body, and that's what I would call the self-empathy, that you're listening to me is sort of supporting, and everyone else listening is creating a space where I can sense into what's going on inside of me. And that's what that aspect is what I would call self-empathy.
Yeah, so what you would call self-empathy, and how you think that shows up in the empathy circle, is that the person being listened to can drop in, because they're being listened to so nicely, they can drop into themselves and sense what's going on, and then talk about what's important to them, or what's inside of them. And that's what you think of as self-empathy, and how it shows up in the empathy circle.
And they're different facets of sort of the same mindset. It's like, it's been mentioned, it's non-judgmental. I'm not judging myself per se. I might be judging myself, but that kind of can be a block. If I'm trying to sense into what's going on, I could be judging myself, and that would be a block, maybe to the empathy. But there's a quality of a broader sense of what empathy, that way of being, is. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying that, let me see if I'm getting this. You're saying about sensing into yourself, you might be having compassion for yourself, you might be judging yourself, and just that internal dialogue, being aware of it, and receiving it non-judgmentally, or not judging it, just experiencing it, and then being able to share what's going on with you. That is also an aspect of self-empathy. Is that what you're saying?
And there's it's mainly that empathy is sort of this way of being, this broader way of being. It just has a lot of different facets, and the training is sort of going through exploring some of the facets.
So what you described is an example of how empathy has lots of different facets, and that you want the training to go show all that.
Some of them, yeah, I feel
Yeah.
heard. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'll go to Priyanka. Is that all right with you, Priyanka?
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to return to what I think empathy is and how it shows up in the empathy circle. And I think what Edwin said about self-empathy. So I agree that happens for someone that's being listened to well in the circle. They're more able to drop into themselves and sense what's going on in themselves, and I would also call that self-empathy. I also think that a listener, the person who's doing the reflecting, well, when I am doing reflecting, I am also noticing what I'm feeling and my thoughts. And if they're different than what the person is having, I set those aside. And I try to just be more present to what they are doing. And I might need to have some empathy for myself in that moment, like, oh, look, you're having some feelings about this, you really disagree with this, or remember that your role is to be present to the other person. What is it that they're saying? Why does this seem to be important to them? So that's a self-empathy process for the listener that might be going on also.
Yeah, so you agree with what Edwin said about self-empathy, that when the person is speaking, they have to look inside of themselves to see what they want to speak next. And also, when you're actively reflecting, you have to know what is going on inside of you. And if it's different from what the speaker is saying, then you try to set it aside and you focus on the listener.
Yeah. I also think that this is also continuing on kind of my idea of what the empathy circle is for. So the empathy circle, in my view, the empathy circle is for building capacity for empathy with other people. So people come in with different capacities for that. And by listening to each other and reflecting as much as we can in an empathic way, and by hearing other people do that also, and being listened to in an empathic way, people build their capacity to sense the three things that I was talking about: what someone's feeling, what they're saying, and why it's important to them. I think people build their capacity for that over time. And so the empathy circle is a learning environment where people build their capacity.
Yeah, so you think the empathy circle is a learning environment where people come to build a capacity, uh, and they build this capacity by learning to understand what the other person is feeling, what they are saying, and what was the third one?
Why it's important to them.
Why it's important to them.
Yeah. And I think an important aspect of creating that learning environment is that we don't judge whether people are doing it well or not, as long as they're kind of following the guidelines, which is that the reflector doesn't comment, agree, disagree, ask questions, any of those things. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, so as long as people are following the guidelines, you don't think it's a good idea to tell them whether they're doing it right or wrong.
Yeah. I also think what Kara was describing about empathy circles, contributing to healing or as a place where people process trauma. I think empathy circles can be set up for that purpose, but I don't think all empathy circles are for that purpose. I think people can get healing, you know, whatever you come, and if you share something and it's heard and you heal from it, that's terrific. But I think I also want to be careful that people don't have an assumption that that's what empathy circles are for. And if that's not what's happening in the circle, then, you know, it's not a good circle, or it's not, empathy's not happening.
Yeah, so you don't want people to come with the expectation to the circles that they can heal that trauma here, because that's not the purpose of it, or the sole purpose of it. It can happen, but it's you don't want them to be disappointed that it didn't happen, because it's not what this empathy circles are set up for.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there is a, I mean, you could set up a circle for that purpose and say this is the purpose, and people would come for that. But not every empathy circle has that as its purpose.
Yeah, so empathy circles, not every empathy circle has that purpose, but you can set up a empathy circle for that very purpose, and people can come for that.
Yeah, great, thank you. I feel heard.
Thank you, Lou. Violetta, would you be willing to listen to me?
With pleasure, with chocolate in my mouth. 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It tells me my speaker doesn't work, but I'm listening, Priyanka.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling reluctant to share this, because maybe like people are already too overwhelmed by technology and all that. But I'll just share it, and feel free not to take my recommendation.
I think I couldn't understand everything you said. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I might lose connection. I'm getting a lot of messages. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can I pick somebody else to be my listener?
Thank you.
DJ, would you be willing to listen to me?
Yeah, you said that you're feeling a little reluctant about sharing something, but you're going to go ahead and share it anyway.
Yeah, and you feel free feel free to take it or leave it. I won't I won't feel bad about that.
Yeah, we can take it or leave it.
Yeah. So there's this project management tool called Trello, and it's a free to use tool, and it's very easy to use, and it's very visual. You can add links to it, you can add photographs, images, you can doodle, it's quite yeah, how do you call it, quite flexible.
So there is this free software platform called Trello, and it's really easy to use, and you can share links, you can share images, you can share whatever you like. And you think it's a very good option for us, I assume.
Yeah. And so we can make columns for all the 7. So we have 7 sections. We can make 7 lists, and each of the lists we can have whoever is wants to participate in that, they can start adding content on that. And the benefit of that is that everybody who's working on the project will have an overview of what DJ is doing. I will have an overview of what Violetta is doing, and then I can get ideas from that and implement that in my own section.
And so on Trello, everybody can participate, and there would be the 7 sections that the empathy circle definition, like workshop, has. And you can go in there and add whatever you think or whatever you would like to share. And everybody can see what everybody else is sharing and doing and can elaborate on it.
Yeah, but feel free to ignore this if it's like too much of technology or whatever, like it's too many things, because I know we can get overwhelmed with all of this, so that's fine. But it's a really nice tool. I've used it in the past, and it's really helpful. And another thing I want to talk about is so I've been researching on self-empathy, and I just feel like I'm drowning in the sea of so much of knowledge and all that. So I thought I have to have a strategy of how I'm going to go about doing it. So I have Carl Rogers' paper in front of me. So what I'm doing is everywhere where he mentions relationship with other, I'm just replacing it with self. So for example, here he says, there is a special way of being with another person, which has been called empathic. So then I'm going to replace it with, there is a special way of being with yourself that is called self-empathic.
Okay, so with the Trello, people can take it or leave it or try it. It might be too overwhelming, and that's okay. But what you really want to talk about is something else. You've been doing research into self-empathy, and it's a lot of information out there. And so you're trying to think of a way to organize it or a way to strategize and come up with something that you can share with the group about self-empathy. And so I'm not really sure whose research you're looking at, but this person's research has terms that you are sort of replacing with this idea of empathy with self, I believe, or something that will help you in your defining self-empathy.
Yeah. The paper I'm reading is Carl Rogers,
Oh,
An Empathic Way of Being. Yeah.
okay. So the paper you're reading, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, is Carl Rogers' An Empathic Way of Being, which is, I believe, a foundation of this working group.
Yeah. And so there's another one. He says that when he was listening to his client, it was just helpful to listen attentively. And it was an important way of being helpful. With that, I'm just going to finish. I heard the timer. So I would translate that for me, for my researches. I listen attentively to myself. So what are the different ways in which one listens attentively to oneself?
Okay, so you're taking Carl Rogers' ideas about listening attentively as part of that empathetic way of being, and you're replacing it with this question about how does that relate to listening to oneself attentively.
Thank you, DJ. I fully heard.
Thank you.
So should we do one more, DJ, and then we'll have a 15 minutes sort of a debrief for the end?
All right, Violetta?
Yes, I think I've managed whatever it was. Yes, I'm listening, DJ.
All right, very good. So I do think that we're moving along here. I kind of sense that we are building the blocks of the next steps. And what Priyanka just said, I think is very insightful and helps me think of my next steps.
So you feel like we're moving forward, we're bringing some bricks to build the course, and Priyanka's insights were very helpful for you.
Yes, and also I love what you said before, Violetta, about that this academic wealth of knowledge that's out there has some purpose and has some application. It does require translation and it does require modification and adjustment to become part of something open source, but it is something that we need to give credence to.
And you appreciated what I said earlier about these more academic struggle to define empathy, that it does take some translation, but it could be very useful in an open source course that we're developing together.
Yes, and at the same time, I also don't want to ignore this incredible sort of new perspective that is developing here in this group about the way of being, which is not really something that is explored in depth in the academic circles.
And you're appreciating this new perspective that you see, seeing empathy as a way of being, which is not explored in academic circles.
At least to my knowledge, it may be explored. I studied phenomenology as part of my research, so I understand phenomenology. And I understand that phenomenology kind of goes into this area of empathy without calling it empathy. So, this beingness, this constant sort of fluid beingness, could fit very well with empathy.
So you do understand phenomenology, and you're saying even though phenomenology might not use the word empathy, it's going into this place of beingness, and could be used to maybe as the fabric of explaining empathy.
Yes, and so I'm very excited about this possibility because I absolutely adore phenomenology.
And you're excited about connecting empathy and phenomenology.
Yes, so that brings us to the ways of being, which I believe is the first lesson. So I really like Priyanka's idea about Trello. I've used Trello before. I absolutely love it. I'm a big techno person, though. Like, I'm a technophile. Okay, so bring it on as far as I personally am concerned. But however, if not everybody participates, it kind of loses its value. So with that said, I'm totally open, however Edwin wants to go or everybody else decides in terms of that. But I really like this idea of Priyanka taking this literature, this academic literature, and kind of, replacing the vocabulary to kind of fit into our definition and kind of ask those questions about what is listening attentively to yourself.
You're really excited about the Trello idea, and you're on board, but you would understand that maybe some people wouldn't be, and if it ends up not everybody participating, then probably it would not be as beneficial. And you're also excited about Priyanka's idea of translating pieces of the self-empathy research into kind of everyday language and bites to understand better how we understand others through the tools of our organism. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I feel heard. Thank you so much, Violetta.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so I thought we just use this last 15 minutes to plan what to do next. I think one of the first things is there a facet or a lesson that you'd like to take on as a project? So DJ, you mentioned relational empathy. That would be great to there's another person, Safnat, who is living in Israel right now, has difficulty making these meetings. She's sort of interested in that too. So there's we can form like teams around this too. Priyanka is working with Colin to work on self-empathy. And there's, if you see the website, the model, the finding empathy model, there's the relational empathy there. You click through and then you'll see there's already reference material, so articles and so forth that are there. So yeah, if you're wanting to do that, that would be great to start with that. Does that work? So is anyone else, Crystal, Lou, or?
Yeah, well, so I just want to say, you had asked me about doing the blocks to empathy, and I am open to considering that. I had a goal this week of kind of looking at that over and thinking about it and deciding whether I would take that on. And I did not get to that this week, so I will definitely try to do that soon. And I think Crystal reached out to me about wanting to talk about blocks to empathy, which I'm happy to do. Did you get my email, Crystal, about Saturday?
I thought we agreed on Saturday at 9:30.
Okay, we did. I thought so. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so that's something I would consider.
Oh, that's right. Crystal, I saw your name under blocks to empathy. I don't know if I put it there, was trying to volunteer you, or if you were volunteering. I couldn't remember. So that'd be great to build it, have a group working on that, because then you kind of share. So is that what you're interested in, then, that topic?
Yeah, that being said, I do see the connection and crossover into all areas of empathy, but certainly what DJ is working on with relational. So I am curious. So I would say I'm 90% there, but I'd like to have a conversation with her and explore that further as well and see maybe where there's some overlaps. And just if I could quickly respond to Priyanka's beautiful demonstration of Trello, I've used Miro board, and I'm wondering if you've used that. The only reason I bring this up is because there's mind mapping there and framework, much like you have in Figma. So you, in terms of creating a prototype and actually creating an MVP, that's something that we could launch and scale later. I think that Miro board has a better system that's more robust to take this to the next level. That being said, again, like DJ, I'm flexible and open. I've just enjoyed working in Miro and other communities.
Priyanka, would it be possible to create like a little prototype of it, because I'm not familiar with it? So there's a kind of a learning curve. I've looked
Yeah,
at some
sure.
really complicated Gantt charts before, and I would create them and set them up, but I could never follow. I would never do it. And it was like a lot of
Yeah,
work to set it up. So it's got to be kind of simple
yeah,
but to see a prototype, maybe for self-empathy, a little bit of a
sure.
prototype to compare. And then Crystal, I don't know if you have a prototype of the Miro, is that yeah, maybe we could then maybe just share that. Would that work? Okay.
Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, is Miro free, or I think we have to pay for it, right? Or it's free for up to certain users?
Great question. I was part of the beta in that with the Masters of Scale community, and I'll have to look into that. Perhaps I can connect with you offline and we could discuss it further.
Okay.
And Kara, did you have a thought of kind of an area you wanted to focus on, or?
I'm a framework person, so I really like the idea of helping make sure that it has sort of a unified whole continuous flow to the entire program. I did want to touch on something Lou said, because I think it's really, really important, both legally and morally, that 100% we're not therapy. Empathy is not, while it can be used in, it is not the same. And no one is here to fix traumas and dramas. That is not at all. And I think getting really clear on legally and morally that's an important point, to 100% agree with that. We can recognize the trauma and drama that it creates, the BS and belief systems of our life, but we're not fixing things.
Yeah,
And so,
we really do try to keep it separate from it being therapy. In the empathy circle, make a
yeah,
point that it's not. And the thing is a lot of because of Roger's work, kind of the active listening, empathic listening grew out of therapy. So there is sort of a connotation
yeah,
to that. And I do try to make the point that it's just human beings relating to each other as humans, and it's not, you're not offering therapy. So that's
yeah,
good to
Yeah,
have
I
that.
think
agree.
before every circle, we need to make a disclaimer that this is not like in a very nicely formulated way. Like maybe I'm too direct, maybe someone who's softer can do it. To say that this is not where you get therapy. If you have serious issues, this is not the place. Because I've personally been affected by this. My first circle, I think I spoke to Edwin also about it. So I think having a disclaimer would be a good idea.
I'm not so sure about a disclaimer, but saying what it is. It's human beings connecting, because if you disclaim something, you almost like bring it up into sort of awareness. So I have some concerns about that, but that could be sort of, I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's like, this is not therapy. By saying it's not therapy, it's like, oh, this is not therapy, and it kind of brings up, kind of issues of,
Legally, you
yeah,
might want a disclaimer for a training.
yeah. Lou?
Well, I was just going to say, saying what the purpose of your circle is what's important.
Yeah.
And if you think people might be misunderstanding it, you could say it's not therapy. Like if you think of some people have shown up for therapy. I think I did a public listening project that used the empathy circle practice for about a year. And we had a statement, about what the purpose of it was, crossing social and political divides. And the circle process is here for people to create more understanding with each other, not to convince each other or argue with each other. We didn't make any statement about therapy, but actually after about 3 sessions, we made a decision that all the facilitators should have information about public services in our community. If someone in their circle shows up that really needs a lot of help, to have a conversation with them afterwards saying, want to make sure you know about these services, because those people are showing up for like therapy.
So lead with what it is, and then is it so
And be prepared, right? If somebody
and then
shows up for something
prepared
else,
to
right?
clarify. This is it's not therapy. This is it. This is what we're doing. Yeah. So.
So that's the stuff I like, is that framework stuff, that set the clarification, lay the agenda, and then have those things. Should I need to say, here is the approved sentence or statement that we're going to collectively agree on? That's the stuff I like to help.
Yeah, well, maybe that would be the lesson, the first lesson, because that's kind of lays out the framework. So I guess the question is will it be ready to go into like lesson 1 next week? I'm not sure if I would have that, because it would be good to have that video. Everybody watches the video, have a little bit of a, wouldn't even need much of a presentation, but watch the video. It gives the overview of the course, and then the idea is to go into DJ into an empathy circle. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so in terms of curriculum design, I kind of relate it to maybe writing a paper. Okay, the way that I write a paper is I write, my research, I write my ideas, and then I write the introduction last, because I write the introduction after I really know what I'm saying. And so I'm just suggesting that maybe this introduction module or lesson or part can come at the end, because then we'll really have a more clear idea of what we're doing. And that maybe for next week, we could just put it out there that maybe Priyanka or Violetta or Lou, people that have been working with this project for a long time would have some prototype lessons, because Lou was really the one who brought up prototypes first, right, today. I love that idea about, let's just go with it, I mean, if Lou has something planned or something that he's tried before and he wants to see if it fits in, I think we should do that. I think taking the pressure off of you is okay for me. I feel okay about taking the pressure off of you.
Yeah, I wasn't quite clear. Did you have something, Lou?
Well, I don't have something planned, and I don't know that anyone else does either. We just kind of people have made some decisions about the areas that they might want to do. So I'm guessing, none of us have things prepared. I agree with what you're saying, DJ, about writing the introduction after the thing. I do that too. I often do that with email. Like I'll write an email and then figure out what the subject line is going to be. But I also think that Edwin has kind of formulated this, and by him doing whatever he would do at this stage, it gives us an idea of a more practical sense of what he is thinking and what he is planning. Plus, I think maybe it sounds like he's got more done than anyone else. So I think starting at the beginning isn't necessarily a handicap at this stage, in this case.
Well, how about this? If I can get this together, the video together, we could start with that. And if not, we'll do another round of what we're doing today. Because I do find this very helpful just for everyone sort of getting attuned. There's a sort of an attunement process. And I'm really starting to understand where everyone else is. And it seems like there is sort of that mutual understanding that's emerging. So if I can get that, yeah, Lou.
Well, and I would just add to that, because I really liked Priyanka's idea of, something gets put out before the meeting and then people look at it and they come with their ideas about how to do an exercise that might let people experience that or understand it more in an experiential way. So if whatever materials you're preparing, if you could send them out before the meeting as opposed to just presenting them at the meeting, then people could do that little bit of thinking beforehand.
Yeah, so it's a video. It's a slideshow I'm working on. I want to narrate it. It's going to be a rough draft, just to kind of get ideas out there, and then we could discuss it in the empathy circle, using the empathy circle, and kind of come up with ideas like that. So that works for me. So, is there any, Crystal, were you about to say something, or you're muted?
Apology. I just wanted to add one comment that I'm just holding true to my principle of that I think engagement comes from people being involved in the process. And even before they show up for an empathy circle, just like Lou beautifully shared, if we could have an example of something that we could read, I think that before people show up at an empathy circle, it is an opportunity to provide the framework. And also from a legal mind perspective, the liability part that can come into play from facilitators. And my having legal background, sometimes people often think I'm a lawyer, and I just don't want to open up liability for others. And so in protecting our members and the people who are in our community, I do think it's important to have something that goes out to people who are interested in participating, or when they show up, that they could read, much like at an Amazon meeting where they have a few minutes to read through and sign off on something. And I would feel better about that as a facilitator, knowing that that's in place, and I'm not going to get sued. So it's just that legal thought in my mind. I just wanted to share that.
Can you create a draft of what you're meeting?
Sure.
So that'd be great to share. So, okay, well, maybe we just, I want to keep us on time, 2-hour time frame. So we'll have maybe just a closing and then kind of final sentence thought, Lou?
I'm just feeling gratitude and belonging. You know, it's very nice to be with people who are trying to do similar things to me.
Okay. Violetta?
I admit I'm a little confused about where we're going, but also still excited. I'm holding that up from last week.
Okay. Kara?
This just, y'all just fill my cup so full. I am full up right now.
Thanks. Crystal?
I trust the chaos theory and butterfly effect that each of us will have. So I'm all
Okay,
in.
thanks. DJ?
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
And Priyanka?
Thank you. My brain is shutting down.
Uh-oh,
So
yeah,
it's
it's late
like-
there. Thanks for staying up so
So
late.
thank you, everybody. It was wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm really excited about this project. I think it has a lot of potential. I've been working on this for quite a while. The empathy, I really see this is going to be a really significant contribution. So see you next week, and some people are meeting in between. And Kara and I, we can talk too about the intro part. So okay,
Thanks, everybody.
bye for now.